Congratulations, Minnesota. I just wanted you to hear this from coming from this lady here. This is how the wonderful politicians work. $9 billion is missing in Minnesota, obviously, and then they're going to end up raising property taxes. You watch, and you're going to end up paying more taxes for the Somalian welfare fund that they handed out for votes. That's how the Democrats continue to win in Minnesota. Is they got this Democratic voter bloc called the Somalians. They moved them here so they can continue to keep getting voted into office. But just a quick oversight or quick overview here about this. They put together a fraud prevention oversight committee. So they sit there and they study how this happened. They don't get in front of it and then say this needs to stop. People need to go to jail. People need to be in prison, and they don't go find $9 billion or $18 billion. They just simply put together a little committee to study how the fraud happened, and this is how they explain it.
By having a culture that accepted fraud, tolerated fraud, tried to suppress fraud in some ways, and did not hold anyone accountable in the agencies. And the public sees that there are being criminal indictments and charges and sentencing for the criminals who engaged in this fraud through our federal partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we're grateful for the justice on the criminal side, but we also need accountability in the agencies and in the administration, and we will continue to push for that. Secondly, I think when we started this work, I don't think we even grasped the scale of the fraud. And I think one of the values of this committee is exposing the scope of the fraud that sadly has gone on in Minnesota government. We first saw it in childcare, then it went to feeding our future. And from there, that same pattern morphed into a lot of the Medicaid waivered services program. So many of the programs that we've looked at in our hearings: housing stabilization, integrated community support, sober homes, non-emergency medical transportation, all of these vectors of fraud in a lot of the Medicaid waivered services programs really were spawned from the original fraud back in childcare and then feeding our future. And some of the same actors were involved in these webs of fraud. And I just think, certainly I didn't fully understand that when we got into this, and I think that has been an important contribution of our work. So we also, on page 9, for anyone who's following along, the anatomy of fraud, which I know our colleague Representative Greenman also called the business model of fraud. We've spent a lot of time talking about this and identifying these patterns, and I think that is an important thing for the public to look at and to understand, to recognize these signs, and for agency personnel to realize this is the pattern. It's not new. It's not rocket science.
Instead of voting for politicians, I think they should just have former mobsters running the state of Minnesota, because she's actually describing here how they studied to identify fraud, and then they talk about certain cultural groups. I mean, let's just say it for what it is, lady, and let's just say, the Somalian welfare people that came here from Somalia, and planted their rear end here in Minnesota. And they're being used by the Democrats to continually get voted into office. That's how the Democrats get voted in office in the state of Minnesota. Because trust me, I live in northern Minnesota, and you're going to be hard-pressed looking for a Democrat in northern Minnesota. Anyway, but that's what they've done here. They put together an oversight committee to sit there and study fraud, to identify fraud, and then they watched hundreds of millions of dollars being shuffled out of the Minneapolis airport in suitcases in cash. And then no one goes to prison, no one's been locked up. And then in an interview with Amy Klobuchar, who wants to run for governor of Minnesota, take Walz's place, so we got Amy Klobuchar, another rubber stamp, the same old thing. And she's already brought up the fact that, we have a budget shortfall, and more than likely we're going to have to raise taxes to make up for that budget shortfall. Well, that's where the money went. The Somalians stole it. It would have been simple just to, when the applications came through, look at the last name, or maybe one line on the application when you got the applications for the free welfare money, to ask where were they born. If they weren't born in the United States of America, they don't get any money. If they're born in Somalia, they sure as hell don't get any money. That would have been very simple. And the whole thing with Ilhan Omar, Long overdue. Long overdue there, Mr. Trump. It's about time to kick that woman out of here. There's no question about it. She married her brother to get in here. I would even highly debate that the fact that her last name probably isn't even Omar. We got a woman that's sitting there in Congress that's an illegal alien as a congresswoman representing parts of Minnesota, the Somalian Rag-haired Welfare Fraud Committee. I mean, it's insane. This is absolutely insane. And to put this in perspective, Minnesota, and I hate to say this to you, the Minnesotan people are wonderful people. They are. They're absolutely wonderful, nice people, and that's the problem. They became a welfare state because they're too nice. And then what they do is the Somalians come in here, took advantage of you, and stole 9 billion, 18 billion, 40 billion, whatever the number is they put on it, but 9 billion is obviously enough. And to put this in perspective, the Minnesota Viking football stadium, absolutely beautiful facility, cost $1 billion to build. That's how much money they have stolen off of this state. And then for these politicians to come back and say, well, I hope we have an opportunity to keep this committee in place and study more fraud, and in our next session we'll probably take a look at what we can do to eliminate the fraud in Minnesota. That's a little too damn late, ain't it, lady? I mean, this is insane. No one's in prison. No one's held accountable for it. You all knew about it. There's no question they all knew about it. And they just sat back and let it happen. So again, the people that go to work every day, try to support their family, put their boots on, go to their office every day, fight the traffic, feed their kids, take care of their mortgage, are getting stuck in the shorts again here for $9 billion. Why, who knows? Maybe the person right next door to you is probably a Somalian eating bananas and rice, living the high life, driving around a luxury car, because it's nothing but free money for them. It's insane. And I hope the hell that somebody goes to prison, and I would really love it if they would just put somebody in place of these politicians that actually do something. Anyway, thanks for joining my channel, and I really hope that they do something about this. I hope the DOJ, the Trump administration, the feds come into here and clean house, because they really need to clean house in Minnesota. Thanks for joining my channel, and I hope you like and subscribe. Thank you very much.